Thank you very much for coming to the Applied Project Management Speaker Forum. Remember, it's the third Tuesday of the odd month, and apparently we're competing with something else on television right now, so I guess that's affected our numbers. I'm not sure. We have a great speaker tonight. I just wanted to go over a couple of housekeeping things. In August of this year, we have the Project Management Symposium. It's a 2-day event, so we're looking for people who want to present, and also we're looking for people to attend, so just keep that in the back of your mind that it's coming up in August. Is there anyone here for their very first time? Fantastic. Thank you. Usually we have about 5 or 6 people for their first time. Can you tell, how did you hear about it tonight? Fantastic. Well, we thank your cohort. Tonight I'm just going to, I have a prepared speaker introduction. Oh, sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Rene LaBelle. I'm the volunteer. I've been running this, I guess, for 4 or 5 years now. I have a lot of fun doing it. And it's great to see some familiar faces. So our speaker tonight is Mike Wilkinson. He leads Paragon Innovations, business strategy, vision, product design, development, and customer relations. Mike also leads Cool Innovations, which manufactures Climate Pack. Climate Pack is cutting-edge technology, rechargeable battery, and portable design. Provides unprecedented convenience for storing insulin at proper temperatures. Mike is a member of the Advisory Council of Texas at A&M Center for New Ventures and Entrepreneurship, serves on the Industrial Advisory Board for Texas A&M Engineering Design and Mays Business School, and routinely judges business plans, senior competitions, and senior projects. He frequently guest lectures for the Engineering Technology Department of Texas A&M and annually judges the Tech Transfer Challenge and Ideas Challenge for the Mays Business School MBA program. He is a member of the Vistage International and participates as a member of the Dealey Advisory Council of CEOs and the Richardson Chamber of Commerce. Mike graduated from A&M down the road, not too far away, in '86 with a degree in electrical engineering. And Mike, interestingly, holds a 100-ton Master Mariner Coast Guard license and is an avid sailor and wine enthusiast. Please welcome me and join Mike.
Good evening. All right, so State of Union's on tonight, so we're competing with them, but that's okay. You'll get a better education tonight than over there, I think. But that's just my opinion. All right, so we're going to talk about my background a little bit and Paragon and Cool. Then we're going to talk about what is risk, things that don't work, and things that work, and then we'll kind of summarize. All right, so Paragon, 24-year-old company, product development, and we design things like this, football helmets and things we'll talk about. And we have our own facility up in Richardson, not too far away from here. And so we take customers' ideas and turn them into working products, whether that be a large multinational customer or whether that be a startup idea. We go through about 8 to 12 different projects every year. So we go through this development cycle, risk mitigation, and delivering to customers about 8 to 12 times a year. We're ISO compliant for medical. We specialize in medical, video, portable wireless gadgets. These are some of our clients. You know, some of them you'll recognize, 3Ms and Siemens and Baxters of the world. And others thrown in there in the mix are small startups that you may not have heard of that have had some nifty products. You might have seen at CES this week or last week if you were in Vegas. Some examples of products, just to kind of give you a flavor as we talk later about risk mitigation, about we'll give you some ideas of the breadth of things that we've done. So insulin pumps up here on the left, this football helmet, we'll talk a little bit about it. So we were asked by a couple of LSU guys, I know that's tough for an Aggie to work with LSU guys, but their money's green. This is a wide-angle, high-def video camera that's embedded in the helmet. So picture a GoPro, except GoPros aren't play-approved for full-contact sports. This is fully NOC compliant, and now you can watch your favorite college and pro football team, and you'll see that in the fall games this year. It's already being used the last year in pro and college football for practice. The only reason it's not in games yet is we have this little rule that you can't have video in the field, well, except for the broadcasters. But they're going to be using this in instant replay, so we can finally see what Tony Romo really sees when he throws the ball. Other things we've done in medical instrumentation across the board there, video docking systems up there in the top right's in Munich. Even the fanciest, most expensive watch winder in the world, for 10 grand, you too can wind a watch. And video products and whatnot. All kinds of gadgets, and so you can see it's a variety that we have experience with. Cool's the other company, that's this device. So not only are we on the product development side only, we have another company where we're the product company. So this is our product, we developed it, we sell it, we manufacture, and we have a contract manufacturer, but we build it and do customer support. So we understand that whole roll around it, or at least we pretend to. And this device is an insulin cooler, a little refrigerator, if you will, that keeps your insulin. I'm diabetic, so that's important to me, to keep my insulin at the right temperature. And so I think we have a little experience in the field of product development. So now I'd like to talk about risk mitigation, okay? Let's first kind of get us feeling who the audience is. Who here is in program management of some sort? Okay. Who here is an Aggie by chance? So I don't know if I got friends in the audience. Just kidding. All right. I know there's sailors in the audience. So, all right, so we're going to talk about risk mitigation. So all projects go according to plan, right? Who's ever had a project go according to plan 100%? If you do, I think it would be, well, it was probably easy. But even then, I think the word easy, we don't use the word easy in our office because as soon as we say something's easy, we get burned. So we say straightforward. That's about the simplest thing we know how to say. So are you here to learn how to avoid risk? Is that why you came tonight? No? You want to have risk? Huh? Okay. Well, I don't have the solution. So I'm going to tell you that right up front. So if you want to leave, you can go ahead and leave. I don't know how to avoid all risk in a project. I don't. I've tried for 24 years at Paragon to make that happen, and I have failed each and every time. I believe if there was no risk in a project, mere mortals would do it, and they'd get paid minimum wage, and we'd all not have a job. So it's almost good that there's risk involved in projects. So let's talk about definitions. Let's get our terminology right before we spend a lot of time talking about how to mitigate if we're not all on the same page of what the words are. So according to PMI's definition, product risk is an uncertain event or condition that, if it occurs, has a positive or negative effect on a project's objectives. Now, when I looked this up, it confused me. Maybe you guys can help me. Why is a positive event a risk? Huh? It's uncertain? Uncertain. Okay, it's uncertain. Okay. Because I didn't have an answer. It's like that just kind of caught me off guard. It makes sense, uncertainty. And, you know, what if you plan to do something in 10 months, you were able to do it in 5 because of a positive thing? Well, then, geez, maybe you would have done more or planned or had some other thing if you knew it earlier. So I guess whether you're late or early on a project, it costs more or costs less. I guess those are risks, whether they're positive or negative. Mitigation, the act of reducing the severity, seriousness, or painfulness of something. That one comes out of that's what Wikipedia there. Yeah. My definition of these two are different ones, but risk management versus risk mitigation. I think of risk management the way I think of management, and I don't mean to take down of we're in a business school. I don't want to take down of the word management, but when I think of someone managing the situation, or managing that project, or managing the situation, I think of that as almost like shuffling the chairs in the Titanic. I don't want to say that it's bad. It's just that it doesn't seem active. Mitigation, on the other hand, risk mitigation, to me is about a very concerted, deliberate, active approach at the beginning of a project, during the project, and even after the project's complete to mitigate and identify, mitigate, and get rid of problems. And so that's what we're going to talk about, is how during the entire project, before, during, and after, identify, fix, correct, and then hopefully by the after effects, after project review, if you will, you're able to, in subsequent projects, not have those same problems again. You know, do it once, shame on me. I mean, do it once, okay. Do it twice, shame on me. All right, so let's talk about what are the issues that we have in projects. So right off the bat, scope creep. Anybody ever had that? Boss wants something more, marketing comes down, customer. Just one more thing. It's not a big deal. Changes. Just forget scope creep. Just red versus blue. You know, we changed our corporate colors, now we need to change everything. I know the trade show's tomorrow, but we can repaint. Third parties. How many things do we develop or build internally that are done 100% internally? Anybody? No, we outsource parts. He sells us parts. We have contract manufacturers. We have all kinds of people involved in the process. Now, in his case, he's perfect, and so we never have problems with him as a third party. But occasionally, you know, parts don't show up, contract manufacturer makes a mistake, whatever. And so those affect your overall build. Design flaws. Now, our engineers are not all Aggies, so they're not all perfect. Notice I didn't say whether the Aggies are perfect. Maybe they're the problem, but you guys don't joke very much. All right, and I'm at UTD and I'm an Aggie. I'm supposed to get, you know, laughed at a little bit. Johnny Manziel or something. Anyway, so we have design flaws occasionally. We're not perfect. Everybody does that, I think. And so we need to be able to identify maybe there's going to be a risk in that, and then what we might do to mitigate that. Acts of God. Okay, that could be your hard drive gets fried, building burns down, tar drips from your brand new roof into your server room at your office. Yeah, that happened. People are a big variable. We just found out that one of our prospects, our customer, we've actually done some work. We're waiting to do the big project. We just found out today, and it's a fairly large company, a few thousand employees. New president, new VP of development, new people. It's going to be a whole new group to meet and do and whatnot. So people change, people quit, get new people on board a project. And then in general, stakeholders. When I say stakeholders, that could be the end customer, that's customer service, it's manufacturing, marketing, sales, distributors, government influence, regulation, you name it. Everybody that might be involved. So I'm going to flip a little bit to just our company. So Paragon specific issues that we probably concentrate on the most when we engage a new client and project. We're most concerned about changes. Customers often come to us and say, this is what we're going to build. And what they mean is that's what we want today, but tomorrow we'll change our mind a little bit. Now, that's okay, but we just need to be aware and think about what might change early in the project. Third parties, probably one of our bigger chunks, and that is contract manufacturers, God bless them, but if they're building things for the first time, sometimes parts. For anybody involved in the electronics world? Electronics? Okay, so in the electronics world, we use these machines to put parts on boards, and parts have gotten to be so tiny that you can put 100 parts on your fingernail or more, and they don't have any part numbers on them, so when they put the roll on the machine and put them on the board, when you get your board back, yep, there's a black speck there. It must be the right part. You don't know. And so sometimes that happens. Tools. So in the software world, if you're writing apps or you're doing Windows development, those tools are more stable in that 1 million people use Microsoft tools, and there's a lot more people using them on a daily basis. Those tend to be more reliable than, say, tools we use for an embedded microprocessor that there's a gazillion versions of the part, and a gazillion versions of the tools. And there's not a million users of any one of those tools. And they tend to have more bugs. And so we have to be concerned about that. And the most of that up there is semiconductor failures for us. So in the old days, when a chip came off the line from brand X, it worked. If the circuit didn't work, it was your fault. No question. That was it. Those days are gone. Chips are very complicated today, and there are tons of errors in silicon. In fact, I'd go so far to say that every chip of any microprocessor or controller of some sort today has some silicon error. And the problem gets, put to the side or gets fixed or whatever. Go look online for the errata of the Intel processors. It's a mile long. There's always something changing. No two Intel processors ever come off the line the same, I think. And that's a high volume part compared to other things. Anyway, those are things. Most importantly here is culture clash. Culture. Now, I'm not talking about religious culture or where you were born. No, I'm not talking about that. That's also part of it. But it's the business culture. If you're in a real strict, straight-laced organization, that's going to work differently than a Google or an Apple culture. And even within that, you think about an Apple or Zapatos. Those are still very different cultures. And that's just within your own organization. And if you're working with third parties and you're working with customers, maybe you have a third-party distributor, you're going to have a lot of culture potential clashes. And so seeing that in the horizon and finding ways to mitigate that will be important. All right, so let's talk about what doesn't work first. Let's get that off the table. So things that don't work. More people, working harder, tons of overtime, unrealistic expectations, threats, sticking your head in the sand. None of those things will work. So one of my favorite books, and I'm not a big reader, but I read this not too long after its first publishing, and until I did a little research, I didn't realize there was even another publishing, but is The Mythical Man Month. We've probably all heard that if we haven't read the book. Who's read the book by chance? Everybody know the book, heard the book? Mythical Man Month. So basically, the concept is you can't have a baby in 1 month, okay, with 9 people in general. It doesn't matter what the project is. There's just a limit about how fast, how quick, and how good it can all be together. And yet, we always try to push that. Why is that? I mean, why do we continually try in our jobs to say, well, we can squeeze that schedule down a few more days. Gee, if we just add one more developer on it, if we work a little overtime, we'll make it happen. Why is that?
Finishing earlier means can gain money at the end.
Say again?
I mean, he's saving days, he can earn more money at the end.
Okay.
Finish earlier.
So if we save some money by by not having to work as many days and get it done quicker, why don't we just earn even more money and do it quicker and quicker? I mean, why do we do that? You were saying something, sir?
Customers want the product quicker.
They do. I want my iPhone 7. I just got a 6, but I want the 7. And I want the bigger iPad. Hurry up. And yeah, we want it, but how happy am I going to be if my iPhone 7 comes out and isn't of the quality of the iPhone 6? Or maybe I had to pay 10 times as much. I mean, I'm an Apple guy, so I'm going to pay more, but I'm not going to pay 10 times more. Even I have a limit. So I don't know. We just continually do this. And I find ourselves doing this in our office. And we of all people, since we do projects, I mean, bam, 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 bam. Next customer, bam, 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 bam. You'd think we'd learn. But invariably, customer comes. We just had one recently come, and they want to have, this is mid-December, they want us to design a product and have 40,000 of these products manufactured, so designed and manufactured, in April. That's pretty quick. So after telling them no, there's sometimes you are nice in salesman lingo and say, well, we'll have to get back with you and see the best we can and then come back and talk about May. In this case, it's December, and we're working back to April or something, I don't know. And then today they call and say, you know what, we're going to this trade show, and we've already got 150 appointments for the trade show. We're expecting our first order from production will be somewhere in the order of 150,000. I said, I've explained to you, we haven't designed it. And the last thing you want to do is take 150,000 off the product, off the assembly line the first time and expect all 150,000 to work first. You build them in batches and whatnot. Doesn't matter. These things don't work, but we still try. All right, we've all seen this. So, but these are two different kinds of diagrams. One on the left is called a Venn. One on the right is called the truth. It is. It is. There's a name, and I've already forgotten the name of it. How bad is that? Because I just discovered this actually. But it's got the hole in the middle. And it's like, wow, that tells the truth. Because we all look at this and we all try to get here to the dreaming. We're going to get there. We kind of can just, maybe we'll just get in a little bit. No, that shows the truth. So I kind of like that. I'm going to start using that as the real expectation. And people say they understand this, but people don't. They feel like they can cheat the system somehow. And so we need, as employees, developers, whatever, we need to have the ability, live in a culture of an office that allows us to say no and to remind people this and for others to believe in this. And the more that we get this way, we won't make the mistakes of getting the iPhone 7 out too early. Another one is contracts. Contracts in fine print. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold this weekend. Which, by the way, excuse me, mitigation. So I was working on the presentation Thursday, went home sick, started working on it more over the weekend when I got feeling a little better. Saturday, I called my business partner, Mike Willie, and said, saddle up, you may be doing a speech. So that's my risk. I didn't even tell Renee that yet. But I had plan B in place in case. Anyway, contracts. This is one where we pay really close attention. So contracts is with a third party outside, right, a customer. In your case, if you're working internal in an organization, it might be a statement of work or a requirements document from someone else in the company. And I would look at those and pay close attention to what it says in the fine print. But note, no matter what you do, now this is a legal agreement when we think about contracts, but statement of works and requirements and documents within an organization have the same meaning even if they're not go to court litigate. But you cannot put enough fine print, enough words in a contract to get rid of all the risks. It's never going to happen. You can't replace honest people. So if you're working with someone who's not trustworthy or think they may not, you can't put enough words in it. I've tried. It doesn't work. So, and you can't trump culture. If you don't get along, you have the same goals and ideals and direction, it's not going to happen. And you can't invalidate physics. So customer wants you to have umpteen terabit Ethernet port, and there's no such thing. You can't have a contract that says it, and it'll just happen. So pay attention to that. The other thing I would advise when looking at contracts or statement of work or whatever is what is the other party asking for? What are they drilling down on? What are they not willing to let go of? And sometimes we find that in a contract, the first thing someone wants to think about is, well, if you don't make it on time, there's going to be a penalty. And so my first thought is if that's their number one concern is what's going to go wrong, we're kind of starting off on the wrong thinking. What goes wrong? It doesn't mean we don't need to think about it, but I don't want to be the first thought on their mind. Second thing I do is I say, okay, great. I like penalties in contracts. What about a bonus for success? And that usually shuts that up. But because, you know, you got to have it both ways. You can't have one way on these things. All right, no threats. Threats don't work. You can tell an employee threat all day long. But in this day and time, unless it's a really bad economy, really bad situation, employees can get up and walk and leave, especially in the state of Texas. It's a right-to-work state. You get up from Cisco, walk across the street, go work for Fujitsu, as long as you don't carry any diskettes, well, diskettes, CDs, flash drives, whatever, papers, you just carry it in your head, it's yours. That's the law. Now, and unless it's specific intellectual property, blah, 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 blah. But what you learn, how you know how to do communications, technology or whatever, electronics design, that's your knowledge. So threatening someone just gets them to find a reason to go next door and work with the good guys, with the good culture. And of course, this never works. But you'd be surprised. I think sometimes people, like to some degree this one prospect, which we won't name, it's just, we're going to build 100,000. We're just going to build 100,000, 150,000. It's going to work. No. And so I'm considering whether we actually take them as a client or not. We'll see. All right. Enough about what doesn't work. Let's talk about what does work. Let's think positive. So 4 C's, okay? Culture, which I'll keep talking about. Communication, crafting a risk management plan, and critical chain project management. Culture, 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 culture. It's so important when you hire and you get people in the organization. I know from our time, we've occasionally hired some smart people that just didn't fit. And it's kind of hard because you get people and you go, but they're smart and they know things, but they just don't fit. And for me, it's hard to let people go. I'll be honest. I'm the last one to let people go. I just sucker for that, I guess. But it's important to find and get the right culture in your organization. People have the same goals, the same motivation, and it's got to come from the top. Culture starts from the top. So if your CEO says, yes, we're going to all work together, yes, we're going to have plenty of time to do projects, we don't compromise our values and quality because it's on some picture on the wall, plaque about mission and vision, but their actions say, got to have it tomorrow, we got a customer, we got a trade show, we got to make it. They're saying one thing and doing another, and the culture really is what they do, not what they say. But it's got to start from the top. And so you can try to push culture up, but in the end, it's not going to happen. So if your culture in an organization is not what you want it to be, maybe you're in the wrong group. I'm not trying to get people to quit, leave, wherever they're at. But culture is a big deal, and it's the most positive way to identify and fix and mitigate risk, because if you're all in the same boat and you're all looking after each other's, the better off you are. That teamwork. I'll give an example of our team. A couple weeks ago, we were getting ready to go to a trade show for coaches, as a matter of fact, for the football deal. So we're getting ready to go see all the football coaches and equipment guys and whatnot, which is kind of neat. And a few days before that, our customer shows up and said, you know, it'd be nice to have. Be nice to have. And it's like, 3 days from when our plane goes. But our team, the way they are, they raced and wanted to get this done. Hell, they hadn't been paid for it. They didn't even you don't even have a contract for it. But they wanted to make it happen, and they busted butt, and they made it happen, and the customer's really, really happy. That's a culture that we have, is they want to please customers so bad. And now it's my job to go bill for it. But joke. God, can I get you guys to wake up? Anyway, so that's that. All right, communications. Open and often. You gotta wake up. You gotta talk. You gotta communicate. Not too much. We don't want to have meetings' sake. We don't want to have memos for memos' sake. But you know, if you're in the middle of development, a lot of engineers say, "Geez, I have a problem, but I'll figure it out. I'll keep trying." And they keep trying. Especially young engineers, they do that, and they just don't want to let people know that maybe they don't know everything. And then they take twice as long to get something done than if they just open up and ask for help or share a problem. Maybe it's a technical issue maybe it's that semiconductor problem. And so being open often, being positive. If you go to your neighbor and you say, hey, your code's crap, well, that's not helpful. Or The customer sucks. He doesn't know what he wants. That's not helpful. You need to be positive. You know, Mr. Customer, are you sure you really want this feature? It's really going to cost a lot of time and effort, or it's going to be really difficult, or taxing, or increase the cost. Put it in terms that they understand. Obviously, be honest and accurate and as detailed as you can. At Paragon, what we do in hiring, we hire engineers that communicate. I know that's an oxymoron, but we hire engineers who can talk, write, communicate, because they're working with customers, often that are not technical in nature, and have to communicate technical subjects. And I'm really proud and amazed when they step up and 1 minute talk to their peers and in terms, techie terms, and then talk to a customer in layman terms without talking down. And I think that's a mistake that I know I did when I graduated. I was an engineer, therefore I was not the highest form of human life. So what else is there? Those business guys, well, they're, we need them, kind of. But didn't really understand. It took me a long time to really understand that. So, excuse me. And the fact is, we all have our skills and expertise. And the ones who can communicate their skills into a common form are the ones that are going to do well. Document it. You need to write things down and speak them, write them in many ways. And it's multidimensional in how we communicate. So I think about, again, how Paragon communicates. Let me back up. Let me talk about how Baylor Hospital's wound center communicates. Been there twice. So they ask when you first come in, you're going to be here every week. You're going to have to do this wound stuff. And how do you learn? And they ask you, is it written? Is it oral? Is it by demonstration? How is it? And so you check that. Well, same thing at Paragon. We communicate both in writing. We have emails, groups. We have extranets. We have all kinds of written ways. We have weekly teleconferences. Why? Because we want to be able to hear what they're saying. We do video conference, or we have face-to-face when possible. That's that visual. We do videos. We show a demonstration of what we're working on, something working, maybe showing this. I mean, you can tell people, hey, Mr. Customer, this works. The video works. That's not near as exciting as sending them a video of a bunch of engineers wearing jeans and various helmets outside your parking lot playing. That communicates a whole different thing. It communicates not only is it working, but the team spirit, the culture, all wrapped up into something more than a status report entry. Video helmet works. And of course, kinesthetic, which is demonstrating. I'm sure you've seen this or some version of this. And this is something else about communication. I can't tell you how many times a customer comes in and explains what they want. They tell us orally or in writing or a napkin what they want. But what they want and what they need often are different. And it's really hard. I'll give you an example. A long time ago, 10, 15 years ago, we had a lady come to us who wanted us to develop a dog tracking device. And so it's a pet tracker. Now it's no big deal, but back then it was a big deal. It was in the movie Firewall. They used it. And so we were going to make this collar. Well, in her mind, she wanted to know where the dog was everywhere, every second. And if the dog got on the other side of the fence outside, we want to call ET, send a text message, whatever, to your phone, so you can go find Fluffy. Well, that's great, except for GPSs, especially back then, consume a lot of power. So we either carry a car battery on the neck, and the dog walks like this, or we maybe not communicate as often, maybe we don't check our location as often, and maybe we don't wait for the GPS error to settle down to the 2 centimeters of accuracy that it could do. Instead, we worry about 100 feet or 50 feet. After all, we all agree if Fluffy gets out of the backyard into the driveway and sits there all day long, 50 feet away from the back of the fence, wouldn't that be okay? I mean, you'd prefer Fluffy in the fence, but as long as Fluffy didn't run down the street, then who cares? So, and besides, it's not going to make any difference if you notify now or notify in a minute when they get 100 yards away. You're still going to have to drive through downtown traffic to get home in 30 minutes, and Fluffy will be further away yet. Then you'll get another message that says where Fluffy is. So we translated what they needed, which is down there, from what you said. Because we knew she didn't want a car battery next to the dog, and so there's a compromise. And so understanding the technology, which she didn't understand, she wouldn't have. It's not her fault, but she would not know that, she's don't you think? Do you turn GPS on, it gives you coordinates, you're done. The fact that there's all this other stuff that goes on, especially in the older days, she wouldn't know. Anyway, any questions so far? Feel free to ask questions anytime during the presentation, by the way. Risk mitigation plan. Couldn't think of a better visual for this. And so this one's tough, okay? In that, so we need to create a list, and I say all or most of the identified risks, okay? So what does that mean? Well, there's a risk that I break my pencil and I have to get another one or get that in sharpen that costs me a minute at a time. Well, we're not talking about those kind of risks. We're talking about bigger risks. And so you start with everything you can think of, and you need to list with that, what's the probability of those risks, and then what the impact is. Come up with some kind of numbering scheme, and I'll give you some examples. And then multiply those together, and it becomes more of a probability of that thing happening. Take that and sort them by the highest numbers, the most risk, and that's the ones you want to concentrate on. And you just work down that list until you get to a point where it's diminishing returns for trivial details. And think about what might happen. If you lose a team member, the acts of God, my hard drive breaks. How many here have a C drive in their office, your computer hard drive, that if it broke, there is data on that drive that is nowhere else in your corporation? Yeah. Well, in our Paragon standard operating procedure, that's a firing offense. So I'm not taking names here. But, and the reason is I'm really afraid. I'm a backup fiend, and I'm afraid of losing data. I'm afraid of something breaking. And so I want everything on the network. And so I get, and I know what happens, especially in the age of laptops and before the internet was such a big deal. It was a real struggle in our office, even for myself. I go travel somewhere, and for a period of time, I'm editing a proposal on the plane. What do? So, but you mitigate. All right, so I'm going to give a couple examples of how this is being done. I'm going to give one as a medical example. For FDA, EN 60601, third edition, okay, it's a big word, is requirements for how we develop medical devices. Now, what I'm about to talk about is risk mitigation for the operation of a medical device. What happens when a medical device fails and a component fails or anything else, and what the cause and effect is for that. So that's about the product, but I think we can apply those same ideals to the process of developing products or projects within your organization where you're managing a project, deployment of something. So, not to the same detail, but I'll give you an example here. So this is one for, like I said, EN 6061. It doesn't stop at line 45. It goes on to about 4,000 or something, but some god-awful number for this particular medical product. And it's necessary at that level for this type of product, but for most of what we're talking about today, it would be far less numbers and far less number of columns. But conceptually, you make a spreadsheet, you've got a list, and you think through what happens. On a simpler example, the engineering program at A&M, Engineering Systems, Electronic Systems Engineering Technology, or ESET, the old ET program that I graduated from, they have their senior projects have to be done. It's a one-year process, 2 semesters, and they have to follow a certain process. Happens to be the Paragon process because kind of how made that happen. But one of the things that they have to do is a risk mitigation plan in their first semester. And so in 419, the first semester, they have to go through and identify risks in their project. And from not just the technical stuff, but from the overall project, such as what happens if a student quits? And you say, well, who quits in their senior year? Well, I can tell you, 2 years ago, we had a team, and one of the students just quit school in the second semester of their senior year. I mean, they're weeks away from graduating. I don't know what they were thinking. And the team, what did the team do? You can imagine. The team went to the professor and said, well, we're missing someone. We can't finish. What do we do? And the professor's response was spot on, which was, suck it up, and you're going to have to work harder, smarter, work with your sponsor, which is your customer, sponsor, and try to reduce the scope of the project, get more time, graduate later, which some actually do, or go grab some junior, because all the seniors are taken, right? Grab some junior on your project and try to convince him why he needs to work on your project to get another warm body. Whatever it takes, it's your responsibility, your team. And the same goes for a company. Who's been on a project, something you're going on at work, and somebody quits? Pregnant. Maybe goes on vacation. Maybe a leave of absence. We're a small company, 20 people. And this summer, I'm going to have my own problem. Two. Yeah, two. Two are going to leave on leave of absence for 3 months. 10% of my staff's going to disappear. I don't like it, but it's going to happen. And I say I don't like it because it makes my life more difficult. But the fact is that both of them have extenuating circumstances, perfect time, an opportunity to go do something they'd love to go do. Just happens to be when it is. Can't fault them. I do the same thing. And so I'm all for it, given that. But we'll have to, what happens, our projects don't end on May 1st or June 1st or whatever. So we'll have to be getting ready for that. So it's always something to think about. All right, critical chain. Who here is familiar with critical chain project management style? All right, very good. A little bit, okay. So we're critical path though, we've all heard critical path, you know, project, task, and task. Oop, critical path. All right. So critical chain, we started using about 10, 12, you know, that was somewhere in there. I don't remember. Before you or? I don't know, or somewhere in there. Okay. So about 10 or 12 years ago, we started using critical chain, and it's worked out pretty well. It took us a while to get into it. So what is critical chain? So it's similar to critical path in terms of, you know, create all your tasks for your project, and then go estimate time. Except instead of estimating the time in the column, you've got two columns. The first column is the 50-50 chance of making the schedule. I'm going to simplify how the overall thing works, but 50-50 chance. And the second column is a 90% chance of things completing on time. So basically, your team should fail by design half the time on that first column. If you didn't, they've been padding all the way around. So you're supposed to fail half the time, if you will, if you want to call it fail. And then what happens is you do the task. If it takes longer, it comes out of a buffer. And so you have these little buffer areas, not pad, calculated buffers that the software does. There's a software edition of Microsoft project called ProChain, $700 a license, which is ridiculous, but it works. And you can, and the beauty about that, by the way, if you use it with other people, is you can have ProChain on your machine to do the buffering and computing, but you can publish it as a regular Microsoft project. Others can view it and read it and do it. They just can't change the ProChain aspects of it. Anyway, so you have a project, let's say its task is 3 days, you take 4. 1 day comes out of your project buffer, which might be between now and the critical design review. Maybe that's the key date that everybody kind of centers up on. And management, all they have to do is look at the buffers. From a quick look, you can look at the buffers. If the buffer is empty, we're doing great. If the buffer is full, we're in trouble, somewhere in between. It's the responsibility of management at the point that buffers get to 1/3 to create a plan of how we're going to overcome that buffer deficit, which might be overtime, might be extra bodies, change in scope, pull out some features, whatever. When you get to 2/3, you enact the plan, and then it helps we'll get your buffer back in order and get back on track, the plan. The beauty is by not having tasks do this by themselves, you're taken out of the buffer. Now we don't see critical path changing on a daily basis who's the critical path. And it kind of distorts what the project looks like. It works great, but it requires honesty. Ooh, we talked about honesty earlier. Honesty in the creation of that plan, so that 50% truly is a 50% hit rate. And why we like this is engineers, especially creative ones who want to please, they have a task, and let's say it's a 5-day task, because that's the 90% number. They don't call it that because they were doing a critical path. They created 5 days for it. And by God, this engineer did a great job. They're done in 4 days. What does an engineer do in 4 days on a 5-day task? Well, they have an extra day. So what do? We'll make it better. On the end of the 5th day, it's better but broke. So now we're into the 6th day where it's now really better and working. So it should have been 4 days, now it's 6 days. So with this, it might have been a 4-day task or a 3-day task on the 50-50 column. And so the engineer is likely to go, okay, I've met the requirement, move on. And then you can always make it better later. Another phrase I want to get for y'all to think about, minimum viable product, MVP. Not most valuable player, that's another sport. But minimum viable product. We should think about kicking out products in a minimum viable product. We can always upgrade, especially today, over-the-air upgrades, whatever. We can always upgrade. But we want to get, we need to make sure we get the product out working. It's better to get a product out working, and we can always upgrade. I mean, even look at Apple. They produced the last set of iPhones, and the Apple Pay was a month later. Big deal. Software upgrade a month later. Get the product out. Don't miss the delay. What would the stock market have done if they were a month late on when they said they were going to announce? Who knows? All right. Everything is in moderation. I'm going to leave to think about, which is processes, procedures, communication. I don't want to take away from any of that. I don't want it to be made up to be too big. I think companies often get themselves caught up in too much process and too much procedure. Now, Paragon's a very process, procedure-oriented company. We love it. But you can have too much. And especially in our medical space customers, not all of them, but some, remain nameless. But some of them, as soon as you talk to someone about doing something, oh, we can't do that. FDA won't let us do that. Where? Who's they? I hate the word they. Who's they? Who's the FDA? Where in the FDA? Show me in 21 CFR 820 in the Code of Federal Regulations somewhere where it says you can't do that. And often they can't find it. Hey, it's a big book. But it doesn't matter. The FDA really is looking for, at the end of the day, like anything else, they want quality things. They want you to follow a process. They want you to check for risk. They want you to have a quality. They want to make sure that the product works, manufactured the same way every time. They mean well, but we companies, we try to get, well, we need to have this, and we need to have another double check. And that process can sometimes get in the way of progress. So I encourage process, I encourage procedures, but I don't want to turn it into some gotta have structure all the time things. Sometimes you just have to be flexible. And our company is, like I said, heavily into process and procedure. What helps us in our projects and procedures, especially with an engineering group, is templates, forms, and process so that, for example, when we create a new customer, go online, hit a button, and directory trees and files just start showing up on the network for that tree. You can name a project today, say what's the schematic file name. I can tell you the schematic file name right now. I can tell you where make files. I can tell you anything you want to know about the project. The theory of op, I know exactly the file name and which directory it is. Why? Because we use the same one on everything. So there's a tree that's the same. It makes it easy. Templates. We don't start a risk mitigation document or a theory of operation document or a schematic from a blank sheet of paper. Hell no. It starts from a template. So again, anything you can do, process, procedure, in moderation, will all help. All right, let's talk about change and how you mitigate change, because I think we probably struggle here with different departments coming to us and saying, we have to make some change, right? We're going to add another USB port. We got to get deliver more product. We're going to open up another distribution in Asia or something, whatever. And how we deal with that change is everything. Our tendency, I think, in human nature is to not like change and to be defensive. We can't do that. We don't have time for that. We don't have budget for that. Something. So this is one outcome, right? Get mad, blame everybody. It's your fault, we're changing. You know? We can quit. Well, that doesn't do any good. We got to go get a job, get a resume in order. That takes time. We can litigate. When the customer says to us, you must do, we can sue them because the contract says otherwise. It doesn't really win too well, except for the attorneys. So a better method, okay, is to up front, before you start projects, set expectations, create your plan and make sure there's no things left undone. You don't want to get started on a project and then midway go, oh, I forgot to mention that we're not going to do that piece. We're going to outsource that. Well, no, you said all the work was internal. You know, that kind of stuff. Explain how you deal with change. We tell our customers up front, here's the requirements you've given us. We've given you a proposal against those requirements, and the project will change. This will not be the deliverable. People ask, will your project be done on time and on budget? Well, that depends. If you think this budget and this schedule is going to be the final one, the answer is no. I don't know if it's going to be shorter or longer. Probably going to be longer. Probably going to take more money because something's going to change. Okay? So we're real quick to throw change orders out. Hold on, that sounds offensive. Every time the customer comes to us, we immediately tell them it's going to cost more. Well, that doesn't sound very friendly, neighborly. Culture. It's a bad culture. But no, what we want the customer, and we tell them up front. We're going to give you change orders, but don't feel offended. We want you to take it and review it and think about it and hopefully say no. So you don't want to make more money. No, what I don't want to do is just drag this project on forever with changes. Okay? I want us to get through to the end. Now, if it's necessary, like we forgot something, we're designing a car with 3 wheels, and we really should have 4, okay, we left something out, important. But if we're going to just go around changing little details, unless we're Apple, where we can do a lot of stuff, we got to get the show on the road. We can make version 2 next year. And so we'll push back. And then, so you talk about how you're going to make changes and how you're going to work through that, and how you're going to communicate those changes. We found out the wrong way on a couple of times where we've communicated change orders to customers by email instead of calling them first. We've learned over time that you should call them first. Getting something with a cost attached to it, whether they take it or not, by email sometimes is seen offensive. So call, discuss it. Okay, we've learned. And then negotiate. Any kind of situation, you're going to end up negotiating, and you're going to just have to think about that. When you do, always think about all the stakeholders involved. So you may be talking about product development, changes in product development, but if you're in the middle of a manufacturing run, that manufacturer's a stakeholder. You need to consider the cost of how that's going to impact them before you solve the problem with management, customer, marketing, whoever else in the company. There's a lot of stakeholders in everything that we do. And it could be things like, for me, it's my spouse. You know, I mean, for you to do such and such, and it requires some overtime and this and that, it's time away from home. So in summary, basically, to create a successful to be successful in risk mitigation, you need to create a culture being the overall arching thing, I think, in the organization, that emphasizes communication, emphasizes planning, minimizes the blame that people want to spread, minimize unrealistic expectations, defines and appropriately uses processes and procedures, so moderation there, and understands that without risk, there's no reward. And again, mere mortals would do it and we wouldn't have a job. So, many questions?
Any questions? My goodness, amazing. I had a question about critical chain.
Okay?
Is that specific for engineering environment only?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it is. I think it's any project. I already talked about electronics and engineering because that's what I understand, though. Yes?
We got a question back here. I'd like to get you to just use the mic. Thanks.
So you focused, I saw the first thing on your C's was the culture. And in large organizations, that culture can be different between organization and organization.
Correct.
And so I think that's one of the challenges, and I've seen that all the time, because too often your leaders will be asking for, they need it tomorrow, they need, without realistic, what do you call it, expectations, I guess, on what it's going to take to do that, whether it's going to be more time or more money. And then they're, like you said, they're unhappy with the results, even though they've given those unrealistic expectations. I find that hard to manage currently. And, again, it's really critical to force that early on in the conversation in the projects.
So what's the exact, I understand the question, or understand the statement. What's the question?
Is when you've dealt with larger organizations, do you see a difference? I guess that's more the question. Do you see a difference in culture between different departments?
So there's a definite culture difference between every company we've had has had some level of different culture. It doesn't matter if it's small or large. And within large organizations, there's definitely microcultures inside the organization. Some that are healthy, some that are not. So if you're Apple, I'm just guessing on Apple, but you take Apple, we have this belief about what the culture is. But I bet the group that works in Apple Japan or Apple China, Apple somewhere else, has some differences that marries with the social, religious, and whatever cultures within that area that change. But even here in the U.S., yes, there's cultures between organizations. Even within an organization like engineering versus marketing, it's a fight. It's a culture difference, and it's a fight sometimes. Management, marketing, manufacturing, and sometimes it's wars between, and that's difficult. And it's important, like because we're working with different groups within, to kind of work between all those, and that's hard. I think it's hard. It's hard to get the customer to understand too why it's important for them to be. And in fact, one of the things we lecture at A&M about is for if you want to rise up in your organization. If you want to be an engineer, fine, that's great. You can be an engineer all your life, it's fine. But if you truly want to go and maybe go into management or do something else, you're going to have to learn to deal with these other cultural issues. But I said you want to be an engineer all your life. I'm going to come back to that. Because if you want to be an engineer for all your life and do really well, you too need to learn about how to manage and work with other people and communicate and understand from their standpoint. Put yourselves in their shoes, how they think, what their goals, what they're trying to do, and their aspirations, and then you'll have a much better time communicating with them and talking in terms they understand. What's the value, the benefit to them versus always about me?
Thanks.
I don't think they do. I think it just happens.
Can you repeat the
I don't
question?
think you could get them to write it down.
Repeat the question, please.
So the question is, do you think people know the culture in their own organization? And I think they're obviously aware of it because they are in it, but they may not. I don't think they can write it down on a piece of paper. I think maybe an Apple or something may. I'll give you a couple examples of where culture has caught us really bad. One, it was most recently, a couple years ago, Secret Service in Argentina. 14 Secret Service were caught prostitution, drinking, getting drunk, and whatever. 12 of the 14 got caught. You know what happened to the other 2? They were sick. That's why they didn't show up for that event. So otherwise, they'd have been part of it. Were all 12 bad people? I imagine it was probably a few supervisors and a few guys that were probably, it's my guess, probably were the instigators, and the others fell along in place. And not just that day, it had happened before, and kind of got into that groove. We're superior, we're the Secret Service, we're the presidential detail, we're above the law. And you get that subculture. That's obviously not part of Secret Service, but if you have this subculture and you let it go, and then just the other day, a few months ago, They published it. They believe it's culture. Well, it took the Secret Service 2 years, 3 years to figure out it's culture. They thought it was bad supervisors, and they fired everybody. No, it's a cultural problem. You got to get people to understand. Even though you're a superhero, Secret Service dude, you're still a person. You got to follow the law. Steven Seagal should help them out understand that.
We got a question over here. Thanks.
So like with the helmet, or like with the, with the insulin product at Chiller, one or the other, can you elaborate a little bit more? Because obviously you've got, once again, in the culture, you've got regulatory parts you've got to meet, like the safety of the helmet. Then you've got to meet the marketing aspect, what the helmet's got to look like for the schools, those different things, and the functionality. How do you blend all those together with your team, and then your team's culture blending with all that?
Okay. So let me be more clear about this product in that we did not, I may have misspoke, we did not design the whole helmet. The helmet's made by Schutt, one of the 2 biggest helmet manufacturers in the country. So we did not reinvent already very successful, very safe product. So the helmet is theirs. We simply take, in this case, an XP model helmet, and we've designed the attachments for this to do the video function, and it's being sold under Schutt's label. It's actually a third party that had the idea. So there's a third party with the idea. Talk about culture. 2 guys from LSU, okay, who think Bud Light is great beer, okay, because I lost when LSU lost 8M. I had to pay a case of beer, and I would have picked something else besides that. But anyway, another long story. So, so I gave him that. Another culture. Let's talk about that. So one time we made a mistake. I said we make mistakes, didn't I? We made a mistake. A customer came and flipped me the bird in my office. Okay. Well, he wasn't mad. We already worked. In fact, we already worked this thing out. But to him, that's the way we talk. The CEO of Schutt Helmets, when I talk with him, Robert, we don't do that. Okay. So, but anyway, so we do have to work with so many different groups, and it's hard. We didn't do the helmet. We don't do marketing. So unlike this is something where we do have control of all that. And admittedly, full disclosure, we suck at marketing this. We hired someone for that, and it didn't do well, and we're continually trying. It's not our forte. Product development, we're great. Want to make an electronic, software, mechanical gadget? Count Paragon in, top of the league, head up high. Marketing?
Any more questions? Go ahead. Hi, Dieter.
I think from your entire presentation and now at the end, now the points that were brought up, there's one thread that runs through the entire presentation and comes to pass, and there's 2 issues that were just discussed. It's the communication between the different stakeholders from the CEO down, and if you get into cultural disagreements between companies, within companies, big companies, I lived with that one for too many decades. It's all missing communication between the parties, and that's one of the biggest risks that I saw, that I tried to work against, was lack of communication in order to mitigate risk, because if the communication is not there, there's no way of coming to having a tool to mitigate any risk if the parties don't communicate. Is this
I agree.
my understanding of your presentation?
Communication is it.
From the first to the last chart.
I agree with that. And in communication, sometimes we talk, but we don't communicate. Sometimes we write. Sometimes we have a meeting, but we don't communicate. So it's not just because you can show in a checkbox of the events you've done. I find it fascinating that all these years, we'll send status reports to customers, we'll have our conference calls, and somebody won't understand something. And the first thought is, we told you, that's the first thing I want to say, right? Mr. Customer, I told you. Sent you a text message, sent you an email, we had a status report, a conference call, sent you a damn video. What else do you want? And the first thought is, it's your fault, not mine. That's the blame. That's what I think humans want to do. We did communicate. Well, apparently we didn't do a very good job, because communication is 2-way. I've currently got this problem, communication is a little side. My mother's been in the hospital about 20 weeks now, between there and skilled nursing, and I'm amazed at the doctors. Of course, they're still practicing. They're not professionals yet. They're only practicing. But their lack of communication with my parents. My mom, with the various medications she's been on and the procedures and stuff, she doesn't understand everything that's told to her. And the doctors, they'll say, well, I told her. I said, I was in the room. She didn't hear. She doesn't understand. Did you ask a question? Well, I did. I asked her if she understood. Well, of course my mom nods. Yeah, yeah. You know, and all the drugs she's on? Yeah, I heard. But she doesn't understand. So you have to ask specific questions. My dad was recently in the hospital for another situation, and I asked him, do you understand? He said, yeah, I understand, Mike. He understood me perfectly. What's the name of your dog, Dad? Where's Mom? You understand? Yeah, I understand. It's exactly the conversation. He said he understood, but he didn't know his dog's name. It's ridiculous. And it wasn't Alzheimer's or those kind of things. Another medical thing. So yeah, communication is important all the way through the organization. Culture. If I had to put two, it'd be culture and communication. They go hand in hand. And you talk about message from the top down. So I'm guilty too. Especially when we have tougher times at work. We need all the revenue we can at a given time. We need to close that business. We need to take that job. It may not be our best, but we need the revenue. And so I'm pushing the price down. I'm telling my team to write the proposal quicker. I'm beating on my engineers to make the time less. I'm doing everything wrong, and I feel pressure to get it done. The message I'm sending my staff is wrong. I know that. I don't always know at the time, and but looking back, right? And so even when I know what I'm supposed to do, and I try, and I work very hard at it, I fail at it, and I'm in a small group. I can only imagine what someone at a large corporate level with shareholders and real boards of directors. All I have to do is report to myself as a board and a couple other people.
How does Paragon establish accountability while minimizing blame? Blame has a funny way of lurking around accountability.
So it is easy when money's flush. When money's flush, it's easy. Write this off, write that off, whatever. So I'm going to ignore those because that's easy. Mr. Customer, we goofed up. Just give you this, no big deal. So when times are tough and you just can't use money to buy things like that, then you have to show sincerity and really go through and do that. So what we do from just accountability overall from projects is, so we start off with, we develop the very, very detailed project schedules like I talked about using ProChain and Critical Chain. And we go through there and we have tasks for the customer, we have tasks for us. And every week we go marching through those tasks. And we hold our team accountable by way of their hours billed toward those things. They have to report to staff meeting every Monday as to where they're at. We have project managers who manage. And we hold our customers accountable as well for their tasks. And so in the status reports, there's parts for concern, problem area, critical items area. And we make sure they're aware, everybody's aware, and we do it gently at first, but we'll make things flagged out more. If this doesn't occur, Mr. Customer, it will impact this thing. So we're not saying if you don't do something, because that's personal, but if this doesn't occur, translation, if you don't do such and such, this won't happen. And our own team, we have our own normal employee-related tasks and stuff. And of course, it's also about having the right staff to start with, who jump up and do the right thing. And if you don't have the right staff, you need to get rid of them. And I'm in Vistage, which is a bunch of CEOs that meet. And I tell you, the one thing we all have in common is we're too late to fire people. And what we find out when we finally do let someone go who needs to go, and I'm not talking about a riff, I'm talking about firing. The rest of the staff is the ones who say, what took you so long? Because they understand quicker, far smarter about it. And the only comfort I get is the other CEOs in my Vistage group have done the same thing, so I'm not the only idiot.
Any more questions? Okay, well, let's thank Mike very much. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks all very much for coming. We got a little gifty here for you. I think it's for drinking beer. Thank you very much.
Thank you.